What's up everyone? Let's talk about modular synthesis and specifically semi-modular synthesis. I'm in the new Underdog studio here. There is no soundproofing, so I apologize in advance for this crazy echo. If you watched last week's video, you'll see I'm setting up a new studio space. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about modular synthesis, but specifically for beginners. I would like to argue that if you're new to modular synthesis, perhaps semi-modular synthesis is the best first step to get started into modular synthesis. The drinking game is that every time I say synthesis, you take a drink. Let's start with the basics. A modular synthesizer. This is a modular synthesizer, a big box full of little modules. Each little panel here is made by a different company, and you design your own synthesizer, your own music making box, according to whichever of those little panels you think you need. But this weekend I gave a modular workshop at Gimmick Radio here in Brussels with my friend Aria, and she had a wonderful metaphor that really helps break things down. Imagine that this is a car, and what you want to do is drive it. With modular synthesis, you have the freedom to choose out all the different car parts. You can construct a car completely by yourself with the features that you want to have. But, and here comes the point of this video, if you are a beginner, that amount of freedom might be overwhelming. There's no guarantee that if you buy a bunch of car parts, tie them all together, that's going to lead to a car that you can even drive. Like at the workshop, one of the students said that the first module that they'd bought was a little step sequencer. And so you just have a little step sequencer and no sound coming out. And you're like, yeah, well, that's not very useful, is it? And so there is a solution to this, which is what we're going to call today semi-modular synthesis. And what that means is that you're going to buy a synthesizer, which is a tool that already has an architecture underneath the hood. It already is a fully working car that you can drive, so to speak. It's an instrument that can make sound and has a personality all by itself, but it also has a number of patch points, a number of ways that you can attach cables so that it speaks the language of modular synthesis. So that if you then want to add new features or new functionalities, you can do so by simply attaching a cable. I would like to demonstrate this idea today with a little unit called the Moog DFAM, which is a beautiful example of a semi-modular synthesizer. I'd like to show you really briefly how it works without going in too much depth, and then show you how you might expand it by adding one or two other modules and how that then multiplies exponentially the things that it's capable of. If that sounds good to you, let's talk about the Moog DFAM. Okay, if you were to buy a Moog DFAM, it would not look like this. It comes in its own little case, like it's a little standalone synthesizer. You see, what you can do with the DFAM is you can take it out of its housing and then it looks like this. It's a very shallow panel, and it has this little power cable connector, and as long as you can send it eurorack style power, then this thing can work in any kind of a case or housing or rack. And it just so happens that I bought a little case here, and as you can see, that allows me enough space to fit the DFAM, plus two other modular synthesizer units that I want to use later to expand it with. So I've sort of extended the capabilities of my DFAM. Now let me make sure that I hook up the power correctly. Hop. And I use the little screws. The screws that I use are called knurlies. They're super practical because you can just screw them in by hand. You don't need a screwdriver. So I power on the case, chuck, and then when I hit run, you can see these steps moving. And that means that my DFAM is in working order and it's going to make sound. But why are we not hearing any sound? Well, what you're going to need if you want this thing to be a self-driving car, not self-driving, but a functioning car that you can drive, is some kind of an audio interface. This is the Volt by Universal Audio. I have no relationship to them, but I'm very happy with this little unit. It does everything that I need it to do. And as you can see on the front, there are some 1/4-inch jacks. You can order yourself a cable that on one hand has a big chunky jack, but then on the other side of that cable, you need to have a little skinny jack. So one side heavy jack and one side skinny jack. I'm not going to use this one right now because I've got a different sound card set up, but I am just going to plug it in, pop. The VCA output is the output that makes sound. And then I'm going to plug it into my audio interface. And there we go, we have sound. If you're in Ableton, you can navigate to the right, audio input, and then if you want to record that, hit record there, and you see this? That's the sound that's coming out of the DFAM. Let me mess with it a little bit. And as long as the little waveform here or the little bar is green, then you're not sending a signal that's too loud and everything is fine. See, I could mute this now. I could turn down the volume and hit play again. And that's what we just recorded. So without extending the capabilities of this DFAM at all yet, we already have an instrument that's expressive and playful and that we could use to make a composition with. Let me give you a little taste of what it's capable of. So for reference, what does this thing even do? What is the DFAM? I've been talking so much around it, but I haven't really explained what it is. And what it is a synthesizer that sort of specializes in very loopy, bleepy, maybe percussive atonal sequences. So when looking at it, I would invite you to just think of it as 3 sections. One section is these 6 knobs up here, which is the oscillators or the sound generating part. So it's the thing that makes noise. It has 2 oscillators inside of it, which are the things that make sound. You can blend them by using these 3 knobs to decide how much of each one that you hear, or you can hear a noise oscillator in the middle as well if you want to really just make noisy stuff. Those oscillators then feed into a filter section over here, and that's going to shape the sound by filtering away a bunch of frequencies. And then it's going to go into the little amplifier section here, which is the loudness and the contour over time. So oscillator, filter, amplifier. And then the bottom section is this step sequencer. And what you see the step sequencer do, you see this little red button move from left to right, right? And if I increase the tempo, it goes fast, and it can go incredibly fast, or it can go slow, to very slow, to almost standing still. And every time that a red light lights up, a new step is triggered. And when that happens, there's 2 buttons that are relevant. For example, when this step gets triggered, here is a knob that sets the velocity of that step, and here is a knob that sets the pitch of that step. So the pitch says how high or low is the note, and the velocity says how loud is the note, more or less. So you can have a sequence of pitches and a sequence of velocities here, and it's 8 steps. It can't be more, it can't be less. It's always 8 steps. So whatever comes out of the DFAM will almost always have that character of a loopy 8-step sequence. And the pitches, the tones that come out, are unquantized. And that means that it's almost impossible to play a proper melody with it. It's almost impossible to play something that music theoretically makes sense. Like, please don't ask an instrumentalist to play along with a DFAM sequence, because it's just going to create a dissonant mess, unless a dissonant mess is what you're looking for. In which case, more power to you. I do love that. So you can have great fun with something like this, but then, as you will probably have noticed, here on the right-hand side are all these different patch points. And these patch points, they speak the language of eurorack. It's a standard that was developed that means that any of these patch points can be plugged into any of these other patch points on other synthesizers, and they're going to speak the same language. They're going to have the right amount of volts to understand each other. And so what we can do, for example, is expand the functionalities, as I mentioned. Imagine, for example, we don't like the oscillator section of the DFAM, or we just want to try a different palette of sounds. But what we do like is we do like the sequencer. We do like the 8-step boop, 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 that kind of a vibe. But we want to get away from the simple triangle or square waves that it can do. Well, let's use the outputs of the sequencer to feed into something else. And for example, today I'm going to use the intellijel Plonk. The Plonk is wonderful because what that is it's something called a physical modeling synthesizer. And we don't have really time to get into what that means, but imagine we're going to listen to the output of the Plonk instead. Well, every time that I hit this red button, the Plonk makes a sound. It can sound like a hand drum. It can sound like so many different things, but you might agree that me constantly hitting the red button is not the best way to make musical results. What we're going to do is we're going to feed in the sequencer from the DFAM. And for that, we just need some modular cables. These are little cables like this. They're sold as modular cables. There's so many brands that have them. What we just need to do now is we need to choose one of these outputs to feed into the Plonk. So for example, the trigger output means that every time a step is triggered here, it's going to trigger the Plonk. Look, here's a trig input on the Plonk. Boop. Now, what happens if I hit play? This works pretty well, but as you might agree, it's going to get boring pretty quickly, and we're not using any of the beautiful modulation capabilities of the step sequencer. Let's use the pitch outputs to feed the pitch inputs. Nice. Let's do something a bit more techno speed. Hell yeah! And now we're doing modular synthesis. We can start tweaking this parameter. And we could, for example, also connect the velocity of the DFAM. We could connect this velocity to this velocity. And then tweak some of the steps. To create a sequence that has some push-pull, some depth, some nuance to it. So we're not hearing the DFAM at all, we're only hearing the Plonk, but sequenced by the DFAM. And we can start getting really creative with it because these cables, you can plug them in pretty much anywhere. And so for example, instead of the velocity out, let's make the decay change. And instead of the pitch, maybe let's change one of these blue knobs instead. See how this sequence has some depth and nuance within it? And let's try an entirely different sound within the Plonk. And so we've now successfully expanded the capabilities of this semi-modular synthesizer by adding in one external unit. And that exponentially opens up the space of exploration. And so each unit that you're going to connect to this is exponentially opening up the capabilities of your sound design explorations. Now let's just go one step further and add in another unit called the Sarajevo. The Sarajevo is a delay unit. So we take the output of the Sarajevo and we listen to it, but there's no sound coming out because first we need to put the Plonk into the Sarajevo. So we take another cable, out, in, so now that's going in there. Let's make the tempo slower so we can hear what the Sarajevo is doing. Without it active, it's like this, and then we're going to add in some echoes. Echoes. And the echoes, we can speed them up or slow them down. We can mess with the feedback, which creates crazy sounds. nice and slow tempo, we have more space to hear our echoes. When you do what I'm doing, by the way, which is increasing the feedback on the delay, always make sure you stay very attentive because it can become incredibly loud, incredibly quickly. So always keep one hand close to the feedback amount to turn it down if the feedback becomes enormous. But as you can see, there's yet another exponential territory of sound design that we can explore. Now, literally, the only limit is yourself. So imagine we take the Plonk back out of the equation, we put the DFAM into the delay unit, or maybe we extend the DFAM with a different sequencer instead. You see, at that point, it becomes down to you and your taste and your vision on what type of sounds you want to explore, what kind of processes you enjoy within music. And that's what modular synthesis is so great at. It's really about thinking and designing and then creating a playful space for yourself to explore certain things within. And once these kind of tools and processes and workflows start to become familiar for you, when you then go into Ableton or some other digital system, you can get very similar results out of them. But it's very cool if you can find a way to experiment with modular in this way. And to bring it back to the core message of this video, maybe semi-modular is a great way to get into it. I hope you found that helpful. Sorry again for the reverb in this room. Leave me a comment to let you know what you think about it. Like the video, subscribe, say something nice to me, and until next time, stay producing, be good to each other, and take care. Bye-bye.